Hello, welcome to another episode of In the Trenches with Gang Green. I'm your host, Bubbs. Today we have another episode of the New York Jets player previews. This is the 16th installment of the New York Jets 2024 player preview series. Just a couple episodes left, and today we've got two young stars to break down in wide receiver Garrett Wilson on offense and cornerback Sauce Gardner on defense. Now, before we begin, let me tell you about our podcast partners, starting with our friends over at BetUS. The NFL season is here, and there is no better way to get in on the action than with BetUS, America's favorite online sportsbook. Plus, my viewers, use my link, which can be found in the description of this video, to get a 125% sign-up bonus on your first three deposits up to $2,000. The NFL season is here, and you do not want to miss out on any of the betting and gambling action over at BetUS. Also, our friends over at SeatGeek. SeatGeek, as you all know, tickets for any event, not just NFL, although it is a great time to, of course, get your NFL, get your New York Jets tickets prior to week one, of course, starting here in just 14 days from now. The Jets will be in San Francisco to face the 49ers. But any event, anything you can buy a ticket for, SeatGeek has it. Use promo code BUBSONSPORTS for $20 off your first purchase at SeatGeek. And also, of course, our friends over at Huga House. You see me wearing my Huga House hat all the time on the podcast. If you want the hat I wear or any of the hats on Aaron Rodgers, click the link, the Huga House link in the description of this video. Use promo code BUBS for 15% off and get yourself some Huga House swag. The same swag QB1 Aaron Rodgers wears all the time. All right, now let's get into today's episode number 16 of the New York Jets 2024 player previews. We will start, as we always do, on the offensive side of the football, starting today with wide receiver Garrett Wilson. Garrett Wilson is 6 foot, 183 pounds, 24 years old, a 2022 first-round pick, 10th overall out of Ohio State, and has spent the first 2 years of his NFL career, as we all know, with the New York Jets. Enters his age 24 season and year number 3 in the NFL, year number 3 with the New York Jets this season in 2024. And man, what a start to Garrett Wilson's career it has been. For what this guy has been able to do is simply remarkable, from considering, rather, what he has had to deal with. This is a guy that got drafted in 2022. You were hoping in 2022, Zach Wilson takes a year 2 jump. Garrett Wilson, you were hoping helps him do that, and maybe they build the Wilson-Wilson connection, Wilson-to-Wilson connection that we would be talking about for a very long time. Zach is terrible. Mike White sees the field. Chris Streveler sees the field. Joe Flacco sees the field. This year, it was Tim Boyle and Trevor Siemian and Zach Wilson still, and only 4 snaps of Aaron Rodgers. To put it simply, what Garrett Wilson has had to deal with at the quarterback position, and for him to still be able to go out there and produce and do what he has done, both from an eye test and what you see on the field, and in statistically as well, the numbers back up his performances with historically bad quarterback play, is simply remarkable. And you have to start there, because I think that's what is most impressive about Garrett Wilson. You know, I don't want to waste any time. We got to give you this stat right off the bat here. This is one of the more popular numbers among Garrett Wilson, but he had back-to-back 1,000-yard seasons in 2022 and then again last year in 2023. He was the first New York Jet to do that in 20-plus years, since Keyshawn Johnson did it in 98 and 99. And Garrett Wilson did that, accumulated over 1,000 yards, the first receiver to hit over 1,000 yards since Brandon Marshall in 2015, but also the first to hit back-to-back since 98-99 with Keyshawn Johnson. And he did that with league-worst, historically bad quarterback play. Zach Wilson, a bust. Tim Boyle, Trevor Siemian, why were they even on the team? They shouldn't even be in the league. Mike White had a couple good games. They probably should have rolled with Mike White a lot longer. Either way, Joe Flacco, and only 4 snaps of Aaron Rodgers. Heck, even Chris Streveler, of course, who saw some action in that debacle in that Jacksonville Jaguars game 2 years ago on Thursday Night Football. So what Garrett Wilson has been able to accomplish with what he's been given is simply impressive. And he's a stud. He's an absolute stud. An awesome pick, of course, a part of that 2022 draft class where the Jets took Sauce Gardner 4th overall, take Garrett Wilson 10th overall, take Jermaine Johnson later on in the first round. And, of course, day 2 started up with selecting Breece Hall, who, of course, has turned into one of the elite running backs in the NFL, despite all the other issues that the New York Jets have dealt with. And Garrett Wilson and Breece Hall have kind of been in the same boat with how bad the offense been, and yet they've still been able to produce. Of course, Offensive Rookie of the Year in 2022. And you look at what this guy's done statistically, it's awesome. In his career, 34 games played, 178 receptions on 315 targets, 2,145 yards, 1,103 in 2022, and followed it up last year by tallying 1,042 yards, 12.1 yards per reception, and 7 touchdowns through his first 2 seasons. Has been very durable, has played every single game, has been a reliable piece, and has been the number 1 wideout, has been a solid piece of this team the minute he walked in, has been an elite piece, entering elite status, I think, at the end of this year from the minute he walked into this building. When you look at some of his other numbers, 95 receptions last season are the second highest in Jets single-season history, only behind Brandon Marshall. And that's where I think, too, with Garrett Wilson, and this is obviously a guy that we know what he's been able to do in his first 2 seasons. He's a do-it-all guy. Whether it's some of his speeds, he has the ability to, go deep. He's got, of course, physical ability to go up and win one-on-one balls. He's an all-around, do-it-all, a lethal weapon at receiver. He's a legitimate number 1. But I think even more so in this player preview specifically, you're projecting what Garrett Wilson can do. And the projections for what Garrett Wilson can do this year, it feels like similar to Breece Hall. There really isn't any limit on what he can do. Because this is a guy that, rookie year, 83 receptions, 1,103 yards, 4 touchdowns, 13.3 yards per reception. He did that with pathetic quarterbacks, right? You look at the quarterbacks that played in 2022 for the New York Jets. Zach, Mike White, Joe Flacco, Chris Streveler. Followed up last year, 2023. 95 receptions, 168 targets, 1,042 yards, 3 touchdowns. And he did that with 4 snaps of Aaron Rodgers, Tim Boyle, Zach, Trevor Siemian. So what this guy can do with Aaron Rodgers, like we talked about in the Breece Hall player preview, it feels like there is no limit. Oftentimes people say, sky's the limit, whatever saying you want to have for projecting what a guy or somebody can do in anything. But it feels like for Garrett Wilson, there's no limit to what this guy can do. I mean, right now, I think Garrett Wilson has proven himself to be a top 15 receiver, top 17 receiver in the NFL, no doubt. You can make the case borderline. You can make the case top 10. But I think after this year, and I think a lot of Jets fans would agree, there is a really good chance a healthy Garrett Wilson, which, knock on wood, has played all 34 games in his NFL career, has been very durable early on, and a healthy Aaron Rodgers, which is what's most important in this equation. Garrett Wilson has all the tools to go out there this season and break a couple Jets receiving records and go out there this season and enter into the elite category of wide receivers where he's viewed in the same light, same breath as a CeeDee Lamb, an A.J. Brown, a Tyreek Hill, an Amon-Ra St. Brown. Those type of guys that are top 5, top 3, top 7 in the NFL, elite wide receivers. If you give Garrett Wilson a full season with a Hall of Fame quarterback and a healthy Aaron Rodgers. Just look at some of the numbers last year that Garrett Wilson had to endure while playing. Just 52.4% of his targets last year were on target. Just slightly above half of his targets last season were on target throws. I mean, that is beyond pathetic. Another number I want to throw out here. 35% off target rate on deep passes. So not only was almost all of his targets less than 50, only just a tick above 50% were his targets that were actually on target. But 35% of his targets downfield were off-target throws. So what they had to go through is just crazy. And I know I'm repeating myself a lot, but that just shows you, I think, the territory that Garrett Wilson should be able to implement himself in this year. 95 receptions last year. I think you look at this season for Garrett Wilson and say to yourself, 109 receptions, Brandon Marshall's single-season Jets record, that should be definitely attainable, especially when you look at what Davante Adams was doing in his days in Green Bay. You would like to see Garrett Wilson potentially replicate that number, those numbers, that production. And Aaron Rodgers is going to look Garrett Wilson's way, similar to the way he did, how much he did Davante Adams in Green Bay. I mean, there was times last year where Garrett Wilson, not just last year, first 2 years of his career, he's running wide open, quarterback doesn't see him. Rodgers will see him this year. Now, Brandon Marshall also has 1,502 yards in his career, or I apologize, in 2015, single season record as well. I don't think it's crazy to say Garrett Wilson could potentially top that. I think you're looking at Garrett Wilson this year personally. Garrett Wilson, for me, my expectations, my predictions, there is a really good chance not only enters elite top 5, top 7 status, but you're looking at a world where maybe he gets 115, 120 something receptions, maybe even more than that. And you're looking at maybe 1,400, 1,500 yards with a Hall of Fame quarterback. Maybe that's a little ambitious. Maybe that's a little high. Maybe you're looking at more of 115 receptions, 1,300 yards, as opposed to 1,400 or even 1,500 yards. But you just have to think, right? He put up 2,000 yards, back-to-back 1,000-yard seasons with no quarterback. The difference from Aaron Rodgers to the quarterbacks that Garrett Wilson has seen, easily 300 to 400 more yards, in my eyes, is definitely attainable. And no doubt 15 to 20 more receptions should definitely be on the table. And I'll be honest, I think the receptions numbers, I think Garrett Wilson, if he's not at 115, at 120 receptions, somewhere around there at the end of the season, that's probably not a good thing, because I don't see a world why he shouldn't have well over 100 receptions this year, being your number one wideout, and a guy that, again, you look at Davante Adams' production in Green Bay, similar production you should expect from Garrett Wilson this season, a guy of that talent. Rodgers has talked about it. The most talented player he's played with, reminds him a lot of a Davante Adams. And another thing, too, Garrett Wilson also has a lot more help around him. He has a ton more help around him. You've got Mike Williams now, right? You hope that you hope that Corley and Xavier Gipson can produce a little bit out of the slot. Of course, Allen Lazard, still have some questions there. But in terms of an actual number 2 wideout, Mike Williams is a high-end number 2, which should hopefully take a little bit of the pressure, a little bit of the attention at times off of Garrett Wilson, because Mike Williams is more than capable, we've talked about this in his player preview, more than capable of going out there and putting up 100-plus yards in a game and 800, 900 yards in a season. And that's going to help Garrett Wilson, where defenses aren't mainly just focused on him all the time. They've got to spread a little bit of their attention to a guy in Mike Williams, who, of course, had a lot of success playing alongside Keenan Allen in Los Angeles with the Chargers. So Garrett Wilson, I think you've got to be fired up to see what he can do this season. When you look at, again, you look at the top 5 elite category, last 3 seasons in the NFL, there have only been 5 receivers in each year since 2021 that have had over 1,400 yards. Right? You look at last year, or 1,400 or more yards. The receivers last year to get 1,400 or more yards: Tyreek Hill, CeeDee Lamb, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Puka Nacua, A.J. Brown. You go to the year prior: Justin Jefferson, Tyreek Hill, Davante Adams, A.J. Brown, Stephon Diggs. Go to 1 year prior, 2021, Cooper Kupp, Justin Jefferson, Davante Adams, Jamar Chase, Deebo Samuel. So if he wants to get into that top 5 category, top 7 elite category, you're probably looking at around 1,400 to 1,500 yards that he need to eclipse to put his name in that conversation, which I think is definitely possible with Aaron Rodgers. Garrett Wilson, similar to Breece Hall, sky's the limit. Maybe there isn't even a limit what those guys can do this year with healthy pieces on offense and legitimate quarterback play. All right, so now I move on to Sauce Gardner. I did this last year. I paired up Garrett Wilson and Sauce Gardner in the same player preview. These two guys go up against each other every day in training camp, every day in practice, feel like you've got to pair up your number one receiver with your number one cornerback in the same player preview episode. So moving on now to Sauce Gardner, 6'3", 190 pounds, 23 years old. He will be 24, though, in just a couple days. August 31st will be his 24th birthday. So entering his age 24 season, the first of 3 first-round picks in 2022 by Joe Douglas, 4th overall out of the University of Cincinnati. And Sauce Gardner, similar to Garrett Wilson, similar to Jermaine Johnson, Breece Hall, has lived up to the hype, has lived up to the number one cornerback billing that was put on him the minute the Jets selected him 4th overall in 2022. And this guy is elite. There's no other way to put it. Entering his 3rd season, another big year this year, a healthy season. Sauce Gardner will be on his way to a massive and historic cornerback contract in 2025, no doubt. And that's the thing. Like, I will just to put it simply, there's no debate. There's a lot of hate. For some reason, Sauce Gardner's a guy that gets a lot of hate. It feels like it's because he's really good, and it's the Jets. The Jets as a whole get a lot of hate. A lot of people that don't give the good players credit because they're on the Jets and all that stuff. You Jets fans, we all understand that. But there isn't any debate, really. There should be no reason for any hate towards Sauce Gardner, especially from when you look at the numbers. This guy there is no debate. There's no debate. He is the best cornerback in the NFL. And a logical NFL fan that watches football, that knows what they're watching, that knows the game, that knows what to see, knows what a number one lockdown cornerback looks like, knows that Sauce Gardner is the best corner in the NFL. If you don't think Sauce Gardner is the best cornerback in the NFL, you just don't know football, or you just don't watch football. That's the most simple way I could put it, because you start right here. 2-time first-team All-Pro, 2-time Pro Bowler, Defensive Rookie of the Year in 2022. All of that he has just accomplished in his first 2 seasons. And that's history. He is the first cornerback in NFL history since the merger to be named first-team All-Pro in his first 2 seasons. He is the first corner in NFL history to do that. Right there, that should be, all right, this guy's making history. He's the best in the league at this current moment. You also look at his numbers. I don't want to spend too much time on, some of the other awards, but I want to kind of dive right into the numbers because the numbers are super, super impressive. I've got a lot here. His 92.1 coverage grade since 2022 is the highest among cornerbacks in the NFL since he entered the league. When you break down some of his other grades, his 2023 coverage grade was 2nd at 90.8. His 2022 overall grade was 87.9. Last year got better, went up to 88.6. And that was one of the questions that people were asking or wondering about Sauce Gardner last year, is after his rookie season, where he had 20 passes defended, he was this elite talent, ton of attention, getting compared to Revis, all of this stuff. How would he respond in year number 2? Would the hype get to him? Would he have a regression? And in ways, he actually got better last year in some of the categories. And of course, you watch him play, he was still the same elite, shutdown number 1 corner that we saw in his rookie season, which is great to see because it feels like he's only getting better. He hasn't even hit his peak yet. He's only just entering his prime. You look at his overall numbers, some more numbers from last season. 3.18 targets per game, 15.6 yards allowed per game, 76.5 passer rating allowed. I mean, just special numbers. Only targeted 3 times per game, 15.6 yards allowed per game. Essentially, he's only allowing about 1 first down, if that, in a game. In terms of like yards put up, 15. And a 76.5 passer rating allowed, which is also a pretty solid number from a cornerback perspective. This is something too, and we talked about this a lot from coming out of college, is he never allowed a touchdown in college. And how would that go over to the NFL? How long would that last? Well, in terms of single coverage, he has still yet to allow a touchdown. They have credited Sauce with a touchdown, or I guess put a touchdown on Sauce's stat line previously in his career. But in terms of actually single coverage snaps, he's taken 355 of those in his first 2 seasons, which has seen him play in 33 of a possible 34 games. And he's allowed no touchdowns in single coverage. He's also allowed the second fewest yards, 0.4 per coverage snap in 2023. Was only targeted 53 times this past season, which was tied for 7th fewest since 2016. 3rd highest forced incompletion rate at 21.1% in 2023. And in his career, 132 total tackles, 2 interceptions, 32 passes defended, and 5 tackles for loss. The 32 passes defended are extremely impressive. And people may say, oh, well, the interceptions aren't there. And that is one thing you could say for Sauce is you maybe want to see the interceptions go up. But in my eyes, I think he's just such a lockdown corner that he's not really going to be a big interception guy because quarterbacks just don't throw his way a ton. They just don't. So the less opportunities you have in terms of a ball being thrown your way, the less interceptions you're going to get, the less times you're going to find the ball in your hands. And I've always said that. People will say, oh, well, how many interceptions he has? Interceptions for a cornerback, in my eyes, has always been kind of a skewed stat. Because you look at like a Trayvon Diggs, for example. Right? Very good corner, not denying that. But this is the guy that puts up has a lot of interceptions, but at the same time gets burnt a lot and gets put in bad spots and will get him not embarrassed. I don't know if that's the right word to use, but he's not a lockdown corner. He's gonna pick balls off. Definitely, he's gonna make plays, but he's also gonna have stretches where he's gonna get burned. He's gonna get lost in coverage. Like, I would rather a Sauce Gardner, a legitimate lockdown guy who quarterbacks aren't even gonna look his way, than a guy that's gonna get burnt twice in a game but might have an interception. Might get burnt a ton during a season, but might have 9 interceptions. Like, that's to me, and that's what Sauce Gardner is. He's a legitimate lockdown guy. Not all lockdown corners tend not always to be the biggest interception cornerbacks because, again, they're not being thrown their way a ton, less opportunities, less chances to pick the ball off. But I do think entering this year, and I talked about it last year, the way the Jets defense is and the way their offense or the way the Jets offense should be this year, a lot more times late in games, other opposing teams are going to be throwing the ball. That's going to cause opportunities for guys like Sauce, even the safeties, to run underneath them, pick the ball off, get more interceptions. So I think you could see an uptick in interceptions this year with quarterbacks late in games. What are they thinking? Throwing the ball deep. I'm trying to get to my best receiver. Sauce possibly on the best receiver. And we'll see how much Sauce travels. You haven't really seen a ton of it in training camp. We'll see how much Sauce travels this year, if he travels at all. It's something Saleh has talked about. I think you would like to see Sauce travel. He's proven he should. I don't really know why they haven't. I don't think shouldn't mess with the scheme that much, which has kind of been the excuse the Jets have used. But either way, that'll be something to watch for. And also, people that say, oh, he holds too much. That is just false. If Sauce Gardner held too much, if he was gets away with stuff, then he wouldn't have just 10 penalties in 2 years. Because the way refs are not going to, believe me, if people are like, oh, the refs and the Jets never get any calls. So don't give me this, oh, he gets calls because, no. If Sauce Gardner was really holding, if Sauce Gardner was really kind of a grabby type of player, and he plays a physical style at corner. He's a physical corner. He's got long arms. He uses his arms to advantage. He's physical at the point of attack from a cornerback perspective, and that's good. But the people that say, oh, he holds too much, please give me a break. If Sauce Gardner held too much, you would know. Refs would call it. Refs aren't going to give the Jets a break. Only 10 penalties in 2 years, just simply false. So Sauce, just a dominant number one corner, and the best corner that the Jets have seen by far since Revis, of course, and arguably one of the best corners the league has seen here in a couple of years, just in terms of what he's been able to do. Has made history in his first 2 seasons in the NFL. Now, you talk about the pay, the contract he'll get, stays healthy this year, knock on wood, as another big season. He'll be looking at a massive deal. Jair Alexander right now leads the NFL with an $84 million contract that's worth $21 million per year. Sauce, I think, would blow that out of the water, and Joe Douglas has got to be ready to pay him. He goes out there this year and, let's say, puts up the same numbers he's been putting up, plays all 17 games. He's going to get a massive, massive bag. He's going to get a huge contract, and he's going to be worth every penny. That's how good he's been. So that's Sauce Gardner and Garrett Wilson, episode 16 of the New York Jets player previews. We have another episode coming out on Wednesday, as always, Monday, Wednesday, Friday. So stay tuned for Wednesday's edition of the New York Jets player previews. Let me know what you think in the comment section down below. What are your thoughts on Garrett Wilson and Sauce Gardner entering the 2024 NFL season? And as always, until next time, JETS, 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 Jets.